What's up guys, it's George Yuyu, and in today's video I'm going to show you guys how to pivot and when to use it. Now I briefly touched on the pivot on the 3 foundational boxing footwork drill video that I made, which you can watch up here, but today I'm going to focus only on the pivot. Alright, before I begin, if you're new to the channel, I love sharing advice on boxing, nutrition, exercise, life of a boxer, behind the scenes footage on boxing events. So if any of those topics interest you, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future videos. Alright, the pivot is a very simple movement and it doesn't require much. All you're doing is you're in your boxing stance and you're gonna turn that front foot, and the back foot follows. But make sure when you do the pivot, you end up in your boxing stance. We're gonna do the pivot without taking a step first. So just in the same position. Now we don't really use this one too often because in boxing, when we're fighting, we're always moving. Sometimes you have a stationary target, but for the most part, you're always hitting a moving target. So for this first pivot, we're gonna stay in position and all we're doing is gonna practice the movement. So all we're gonna do, we're gonna be in our boxing stance, we're gonna turn that front foot, we're gonna pivot, our back foot's gonna follow. Make sure we don't take too big of a step or too small of a step. We wanna end up in our boxing stance. So I'm gonna pivot and I'm gonna face that way. And we're gonna pivot here. So we end up in our boxing stance, now we're facing the other way, right? We're gonna pivot again, we're gonna end up facing the flags. Ready? And pivot. One more time, we're gonna pivot, face the wall over there, ready? Go. One more time, ready? Go. Good. So we pivot in the same position. Very simple movement. All right, the second way we're gonna pivot, we're gonna turn our front foot and we're gonna face that way. So now we're turning the opposite direction. Okay, we're gonna end up facing that wall over there. You guys can't see the wall, but you can see the movement. If you're standing orthodox, this pivot may be a little awkward because it's not a normal movement, but the more you practice it, then you'll feel more natural doing it. All right, so we're gonna pivot. We're gonna pivot towards our left side, counterclockwise. You ready? We're gonna pivot, face that way, and go. Again, very simple movement. End up in our boxing stance. We'll do it again. We're gonna face the flags. Ready? And go. Make sure your hands are up by your face. We're gonna pivot again. Face this way. Ready? Go. One more time. Pivot, face the camera. Go. Here. So the pivot is a very simple movement. All we're doing is we're turning our front foot and the back foot just swings and follows. All right, this next one, we're gonna take a step before we pivot. Now this one's what I like to teach, to take a step before you pivot, because come here, get in your boxing stance. Let's say I'm in front of him and it doesn't matter which way I pivot. If I don't take that step, let's say I stay in the same position and I want to create a better angle and I pivot to my right, I'm gonna pivot here, I'm still in position. He can still hit me with his jab, he can still hit me with his cross, he can hit me with all the other punches. And same thing, if I stay here and I pivot this way, there's no point in doing that. I'm still in position to get hit with his cross, with his hook, with his jab, any of those punches. So what I like to teach is take a step first before you pivot. All right, so we're gonna take a step before we pivot. Now what this is gonna do is gonna allow me to create a deeper angle. Not only that, I'm gonna get out of danger, right? I mean, you're always in danger when you're in a boxing match, but at least this kind of minimizes your danger, if that makes sense. So we're in our boxing stance, hands up. Again, if I stay there and I pivot in front of him like this, I'm still positioned to get hit and I'm not creating an angle, I'm just turning my back to him. And if I pivot the other way here, I'm creating an angle for my hook, but I'm still in position to get hit with his cross, with his jab, upper hook, any punch. So what we need to do is take a step first. I want to slip at the same time. So I'm going to take a step and slip, getting my head off the center line. His head's in the center line, my head's in the center line. We're both in position to get hit, right? You can hit me from there. Boom, boom, you can hit me, right? Yeah. That's what we want to do is get our head off the center line, slightly. So we're gonna get our head off the center line, we're gonna slip, and we're gonna step forward before we do that movement, which was that pivot that we did first. So we're in our boxing stance, he throws this cross, I'm gonna step, notice that step. I get my head off the center line to avoid this cross, and I'm gonna pivot here. Now I'm in a better position. Yes, he can still hit me with his hook or with his jab, but by the time he throws that, hopefully you're already throwing something, right? So as soon as you create that angle, you wanna be throwing something. So this one, don't throw any punches. I'm just gonna step and pivot to create a better angle. So I'm in boxing stance, I'm gonna step, slip, pivot. I'm here now, pa, 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 pa. So even if he turns and faces me, he's still a half second behind. So I'm gonna step, pivot, he turns around, faces me, I'm already throwing something. Now I'm gonna pivot to the opposite way. Now this one, you're slightly breaking the rule of not crossing your feet, but we're gonna cross it a little bit. We have to take risk in order to get rewarded, I guess. If we never take that risk, we'll never create those opportunities, and who knows, you might land a solid shot. So for this one, I'm gonna step to the outside of his foot. Okay, this is important here. So I wanna minimize that risk by changing levels and slipping and getting down low. So I'm in my boxing stance here. I'm gonna take a step to the outside. As I take a step, I'm slipping and changing levels. So I'm here. Notice what I'm doing. I'm just taking a step to the outside and I'm changing levels. One thing to keep in mind, don't do this here. If you drop that left hand, you might get caught with the right hand over the top. So in the case that he knows what you're doing and throws the cross, at least you have your hand up to catch it. I'm gonna take a step to the outside and I'm gonna slip. From here, we're gonna do that movement we practiced earlier. Turn. By the time he turns around, I'm already throwing something. Pa, pa, pa. Here, getting my head off the center line. Here, okay, my back is slightly towards him. From this position, I'm gonna do that pivot we did. Boom. Then I'll create, pa, pa. I create the angle to throw those punches. Let's do it again. This time you can turn around when I do that. So in our boxing stance, I'm gonna step, slip, and pivot. So as soon as he turns around, I'm throwing something. So another good time to use the step pivot is when your back is against the ropes. I know this is not the ropes here, but we're gonna imagine it's the ropes. So this is a perfect time to use that step pivot. Again, you don't wanna pivot in front of him. Let's say your back is against the ropes and you do this pivot here, you're still in position to get hit with the cross, with the jab, with the hook, any punch. So what you wanna do is kind of lure your opponent in. Take that step to the outside and then pivot. And if you want, you can push his shoulder or his head so his back ends up against the ropes. So start throwing punches. Your opponent's throwing punches at you. You're in the ropes. You're trying to move. You step, pivot. Now his back is against the ropes. A headbutt or what? Yeah. It's all right. Your back is against the ropes. You feel overwhelmed. Real quick, step, pivot. One more time. Go. Other way. All right, guys, thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, please like, share, and subscribe. If you want me to go over a specific topic, drill, punch, combination, whatever, leave it in the comment section below. And thanks for watching.